So last up, we've got an esteemed panel of folks that are all have the title of immediate past chair. They can tell you some of the their successes and good institutional knowledge. On the panel, we've got Francine Folks, who is an administrative law judge with the Florida Division of Administrations here in town since October 2017. In that capacity, she hears cases brought under the Florida APA involving environmental land use issues, and she is the immediate past chair of the government lawyer section. And I see her a lot of administrative law section things too, so she's got a hand in a couple of different places. Kristen Norse is a partner at Kynes, Markin & Fellum, where she practices exclusively the areas of appellate practice, litigation support, trial consulting, and state and federal courts. Ms. Norse has over 20 years of experience in appellate practice. She is the past president of Florida Association of Women Lawyers and the Hillsborough Association for Women Lawyers. She also serves as the Florida Bar Citizens Advisory Council as lawyer member and on special committee on gender bias, and she is the immediate past chair of the appellate practice section, and also someone good to follow on Twitter. Joe Schimmel practices with the tax law boutique of Cohen, Chase, Hoffman, and Schimmel in Miami. Joe is board certified in tax law by the Florida Bar and served a 3-year term on the Tax Law Certification Committee. Joe is a past chair of the Council of Sections, this group, and a past chair of the tax session. You're the immediate past chair of the tax section, correct? And then last but not least, Colette Small is the immediate past chair of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. Ms. Small is board certified in the Florida Bar as a specialist in elder law. She currently serves on the executive council of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar Diversity and Inclusion Standing Committee, and the board of directors for the Weston Bar Association. She's a past chairperson for both the CLE committee and the Law School Liaison Committee for the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar, and the immediate past chair, and also someone you should follow on Twitter.
The judge always goes first, don't they? No?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I thought I'd get away with not going first by sitting here. Okay. As was mentioned, I'm the immediate past chair, we all love that title, of the government lawyer section. And our topic today has to do with, just giving you an idea of our experience, of things we've tried, things that didn't work, that worked, a little bit of what our goals were when we were chair. And so what I'm going to start with is let you know that I'm in my 28th year with the state of Florida. And I joined or was recruited to the Executive Council of the Government Lawyer Section in 2001. So I had been on that Executive Council in various capacities doing the busy work before someone said, hey, we want to put you on the leadership track. So that was, so I had seen a lot of the ups and downs of sections, and also I was on the Executive Council of a couple of other sections over the years. And so when I went on the leadership track and I came up to my year as chair-elect, what I decided to do was we were in a situation where we were kind of in a doldrum, I guess is the word, at a low point. We are a smaller CLE. As you met earlier this morning in the CLE talk, our current chair-elect, Anthony Miller, we had not done some of our signature CLEs for a number of years. That federal seminar had not been done since 2008, which would be 10 years ago. As I was telling my fellow panelists earlier, we had not published our traditional newsletter in almost 2 years, which would be the term of almost 2 chairs. And so I came where I was coming from for my year as chair was, and what I gave to the membership in my little presentation at the beginning of my year was back to basics. if you find yourself in a situation where you're taking over and the section has kind of been in indulgence, not been doing much. I mean, membership has been declining in all sections a little bit, but our members just hadn't heard from us, in my mind. And so my goal was back to the basics was our theme, and DNA was what I put out there. Our members always want discounted CLEs. When we've done surveys over the years, that's one of the benefits. Even though we have competition, as we heard earlier, that's one of the benefits they find with especially the more substantive law sections of the Florida Bar. Networking opportunities, and even though attendance at live CLEs has gone down, people still want some networking opportunities, whether it's at the CLEs or at the conventions, the winter meeting, and, so whenever we used to have 3 in-person executive council meetings per year. That's gone down to 2, but that was one thing I wanted to promote, that folks do their best to attend the in-person executive council meetings at the Florida Bar Annual Convention, at the winter meeting. And A was for, I forget now. It had to do with articles. A was for articles, again, to revive the newsletter so that we would have a presence in the inbox of our membership. And so what I did was I made the plan, and one of the things you have to do if you're going to make a plan like that, or any plan for your year as chair, is to get your leadership on board. So my chair-elect, my treasurer, my secretary at the time, and then, of course, your members of your executive council. You need to. I wrote. It's probably too long now that I think about it, but it was a lengthy 2-paragraph, and it wasn't the chair a message in the newsletter. It was a standalone letter to the membership that the Florida Bar sent out under the government lawyer letterhead to say, hi, hello, I'm your chair for this year. Here's the plan. And like I said, back to the basics and DNA is how it could be summed up. Which is helpful. I'm of the generation where I'm kind of learning that, the something that people can hold on to, and not necessarily have to remember the rest of what I wrote in that message. And so that was the plan, and it was ambitious. And don't get disappointed if at the end of the year all of it didn't get implemented. But the ambition was to go back to 4 quarterly newsletters in the 1 year. We have at least three signature CLEs that the government lawyer section had done over the last years. One was the federal seminar, which actually my predecessor chair had started the push to bring it back, and so it took about a year and a half of planning under the leadership of then CLE Chair Anthony Miller, who you heard from this morning, to make it come back to fruition. So it took a little bit of time. Now the momentum is, moving forward. Practicing before the Supreme Court, which he talked about too this morning, was another signature live CLE. And I didn't see the reason why I couldn't come back, because it's held at the Florida Supreme Court. They only allow, I think, up to 50. It's limited capacity because, of course, you watch oral argument and then you get to chat with the justices. So it's not something that you would expect large attendance at anyway. We also have another live CLE that is signature, practicing before the legislature, where we then go and tour the Capitol and hold some as a one-day CLE there. And we're hoping to have that in this upcoming year. That would also be, that was something that used to be also a every 2-year effort. And so what we managed to accomplish was the federal seminar and the practicing before the Supreme Court. One of the things I wanted to accomplish, but we had to really focus our efforts on making especially the federal seminar successful, was webinars and lunchtime CLEs. So we still need to be looking at putting that kind of program together and making that just something that's routine and will occur every year. We managed to put out 2 newsletters. Our newsletter was renamed a few years ago The Voice, because the government lawyer section is actually less of a substantive law section and more of a section that represents the demographic of those who work in public service, both federal, state, and local, and municipal lawyers. So we were renamed our newsletter to The Voice maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. And so the 2 publications of The Voice came out. As how we were talking earlier, it's hard when you're the editor to get, especially substantive articles. But one of the things I learned over the years is just get it out the door. Get it out the door and into the inbox of your membership so they see you still exist. So they see when they pay their, whatever their dues are, that, okay, that's, I'm getting something. So I have to admit we didn't have a substantive law review-like articles in our newsletter, but we had the chair message. We had we do a government member spotlight, and that had started before. So there was a spotlight on a government lawyer member. There was a short article from a member at the Attorney General's office on a topic, more something like a case note, something of interest. Here's a case. Here's what's going on. We had advertising for the federal seminar, CLE, and then all the other stuff that the bar they can always fill. They can always fill a space with bar, the bar ads, and I think we had a copy of our membership application. So it may have been 8 or 9 pages, but because everything's now is electronic. We went purely electronic. We don't do hard copies, mail out. So the bar staff layout had done a layout for when it was renamed The Voice. It's fantastic. It's very colorful, red, white, and blue. The government lawyer spotlight page has an actual spotlight as if you're on a stage. So all of that, all of those graphics can be done, and it's in a PDF, and we posted it to our website and set it out to the membership with a link. So we managed to do 2. The last one again contained my chair's message, which then told the membership what we accomplished, because it came out just the week after the annual convention. So basically, I just used the annual report that we give for the Florida Bar News, and we posted that. And then along with the Florida Bar, every year we give the Claude Pepper Outstanding Government Lawyer Award, and so we spotlighted that person. And I think there may have been one other article, the report from the federal seminar about what happened, and pictures. And so again, we weren't able to scurry up a substantive legal article, but our membership sees we still exist. We're out there. We are spotlighting government lawyers. We are giving out awards, and so it's kind of like a rising from the ashes kind of thing. And the new chair, he's already put out his message that he's going to move forward with the same principles and continue building on that. One of the other things that I had to learn, and having been on this executive council for a number of years, is, as we all know, we're all volunteers. We do have a real job and a real life. And that's one of the things that I tried very hard to remember, even as a chair, is, when folks come and say, I know I promised I'd commit to X, but such and thus has come up and I can't. Need to just learn to be flexible and say, okay, I understand, and maybe have to find someone else to do it. But at the same time, just not get wigged out when people cannot commit the number of hours that they promised or that they would like to, but their real job, their real family, and life just gets in the way. So that's another thing we need to remember, that we're all volunteers here, and thank the collective us for putting in those volunteer hours. So constantly thank your executive council, your officers, your members who work on different things for putting in the hours that they do.
Francine, can I jump in? And
oh, sure. Am I taking up too much time?
No.
Making me go first.
No. On the last, on the previous point of sending things out, and this is, I guess I never know whether everybody else already knew something that I didn't know, which was clearly the case on the website and Twitter thing. But on the sending out the emails, because the way that the program administrators send them out, you can see whether people clicked on the email at all, and if there was an email, whether they went through and looked at the newsletter. And I tried, for some things, doing it a couple different ways just to see, are people clicking? Because the problem, when you send out a newsletter by mail, it doesn't usually come back, so you figure it got where it was supposed to go. But when you're emailing things, it really feels like the void. And so checking with your program administrator and finding out, did most of your members open it? It's, you can learn from that, and it will give you that sense of, yes, somebody actually did, or a lot of people actually did click through.
Okay.
So that's why I wanted to interrupt at that point.
Well, actually, I didn't know that. I learned that too today. But like I said, no, I can pass it on to the chair. And so he can follow through on actually looking for those metrics and those numbers. I myself just wanted to get it out there because it hadn't been out there in almost 2 years. So, I did get some feedback because people would email me, and especially when this standalone chair message went out at first, laying out our plan. And so that was excellent to know that people were on board and there was buy-in. The other thing that social media, I don't want to repeat what was said before, but I think social media is very important. It's, of course, obviously the wave, not just of the future. It's been the wave for a while. You want to, as a leader, and they already mentioned that, get social media person on board. We don't have the funds to hire a consultant. I don't think we do, but maybe we'll find out we do, because our treasurer would have to sit down with a bar and look at our numbers. But if you find a person in your membership who's willing to do it and will commit to do it, then just take them up on it. This year, we already have someone who's volunteered. They were the membership chair last year, and they didn't feel like they had much to do. But one of the things that we need to realize, and old minds need to come to grips with, is it's all intertwined. Membership with marketing, with social media, is all intertwined. And so one of the things we're actually looking at, which I've been asked now as an ex officio member of the Executive Council to head up and to be involved with, is maybe changing our bylaws with regard to the committees that we have, because we have membership and basically technology as two different committees, when maybe membership, marketing, and technology and social media should all be one. And so things like that we're learning and need to look at. One other thing that I did do, and I don't know if they read it, but I put it out there, and I'm sure I'm going to make sure that it goes out after this meeting, is to put this book out there for at least your officers. Each section, they don't have to read the whole book. They just have to read the section that pertains to their the office that they hold, and that goes a long way, and to encouraging people and helping them to know what it is that they're doing. the current chair just made a new person on the executive council the secretary, and I'm sure she's like, well, what are my duties? Well, all he has to do is say, well, in such and such part of this book, you can at least read the basics, and then we can go from there. One of the things I've been asked to talk about, and I'm going to finish with that, because I feel like I'm talking too much, is the ability to have more members across sections by the joint dues program. I think that's been in place for a long, long time, because I'm almost sure that almost for my entire career I've been a joint member of the government and administrative law section for at least as long as they've had that joint membership. And the government lawyer also has a joint three-way with government admin and criminal law. And I think that's a great way to have people be members of more than one section. It's a break on the dues for each, the combined dues for each, and it really helps increase our membership, I think, and also promotes us to be more aware of other sections. For example, I'm on the executive council of the administrative law section, have been for a few years now, and before I was also on the executive council of the environmental and land use law section. And it's interesting when you're on different section executive councils to see how different sections operate, but it also helps you to bring that knowledge across sections, and maybe back and forth with what's a good idea, what worked, what didn't work, and so that's helpful. The only drawback, and you have to be careful, and maybe as lawyers you can negotiate the terms up front. I don't know. You'd have to ask the Florida Bar. Was government lawyer raised our dues maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and our joint dues, you have to go to your section that you have joint dues with, and have them consider and vote on whether they will agree to raise the joint dues, and our chair it probably was 2 years ago, was not able to convince those sections to raise the joint dues. So it was a little disappointing for us, because we were at that cusp of how do we raise revenues and get the edge above that $18 that you have to get, that the bar gets for each paying member, and so it was a little disappointing, but it's still a good thing to do, to have joint dues, and interestingly enough, I was telling the panel that the other sections are now thinking of raising their dues. So they might be coming back to us to say, hey, we want to raise the joint dues now. But on the overall, joint dues are a good deal, because, for example, with administrative and government, I think our individual dues is now 40. Theirs is still 25. So a total would be 65 if you were to just individually join each section, and the joint dues is 45, and so that's a really good break for folks who are looking to first join and have to consider their budget. That's about all I have.
I have a question. How do they know about this opportunity to have the joint dues? I mean, I don't think it's on the form when you select your sections, is it?
It should be.
Oh, okay.
If memory serves me correct, I'm not sure about the electronic form online now, when you pay your dues online, but the government, we who work in government, our agencies pay our bar dues, so we still have to get the form, and it is on the form. Yeah.
That question came up at the Council of Sections meeting in June, and I think that we were talking about needing to get with folks that we think might be interested in doing that now, so that we start the ball rolling, and you probably need to talk to your liaison about that, so that it would be ready for the next year's bar dues statement.
Correct.
And I can't remember the timelines that we talked about, but that's something that y'all should be talking to folks about now.
I know there is a timeline, and you probably want to talk to your program staff or your board liaison about that. If you and if your section and another section agree to do joint dues, then they have to go through a process and get it all into accounting so that it will show up on the next cycle of bar due statements.
Yeah, and maybe if Terry steps back in, we can ask him because I think he had commented on it.
Well, we were definitely told that increases in dues have to be part of your budget. So you got the timeline on that. We've got to have that before the end of the year. Well, I guess finalized by December 15th, and then we can negotiate with the bar and how it actually shows up in the statement. My recollection is the last time we raised dues, it didn't make it into the next bar cycle, and it took us an extra year.
Yes, that happened to us too. Yeah, when we finally. There's a long story, but in the end, it took a couple of cycles. Right. To get in.
Okay. I'll go next. I'll actually touch on I had some comments on a bunch of the things the judge said. So on planning, I think. What Judge Folk said is so key. The set pieces. Every section probably has set pieces. And so when I start planning, I think first, what are the set pieces? That's what I've got to get through. That's what my section is known for. If I don't do the dessert reception at annual, man, is that going to go down in history. So if you're lucky, like I was, those set pieces are already in place. And you kind of know how you're going to get those accomplished. And then your next level is what can I do in my term, to improve on either those things or adding another layer that's sustainable. And then, of course, my third level was like, maybe I'll get to it, but probably not, which is where it stayed. And then I think then your next step of planning is identifying your people and setting up how they're going to be able to accomplish that. And I think that's another thing that you mentioned. Like, these are volunteers. This is a demanding profession. We have lives. Somebody's child is going to get hospitalized. They're going to go through a divorce. They're going to have, that the minute that they're supposed to start their project, their client's going to end up in the federal clink or something, and they're going to need to do a habeas. This is going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. And so, you've got your plan in place, and here are your people. And think not only about that first line of people, but that second line of people and that third line of people, and making sure you can tell your first line of people, if you need backup, we got it. And then breaking it. This is, I think, one of the biggest things is you've got to break these things into manageable pieces. You can't give somebody something that's going to require them to clear their calendar for a full week and expect that it's going to be done. Because there's going to be too many other demands on their time. So trying to think about how can you break it up into manageable pieces and put somebody in charge of each piece and then have backup for them. And then, of course, the other part of you can never plan far enough ahead. That's my definite lesson. And so working with next year's leadership so that they're ready and that they can get started on their things and start those things in place, I think is really important. What worked for us this year really well was the webinars. It took us a long time to get to the point where we thought that either our leadership or our members were ready for a webinar program. We have traditionally done 10 one-hour CLEs by telephone conference. And they were really popular. We thought they were really popular. We had good attendance on all of them. And so we decided to take the plunge. Our administrator, Joanne Shearer, at the time, helped get all the information from the bar, and our CLE chairs, Kansas Gooden and Chris, put together the whole plan, and then we made the jump. And yes, I'm not going to tell you we didn't have some glitches. There's emails that go out that aren't exactly correct, and they're automated, so you don't realize it until they happen. But we got it off the ground. We had some minor glitches along the way. We saw what we thought was good attendance at a luncheon CLE of 30 to 50 people jump to 99, 100 people every webinar. People like it. we had, of course, so I had one member who, when we switched, had trouble with the technology, was, oh, I don't know why you did this. And a few months later, came back and said, you know what, I'm so glad you did this, because now if I get caught in court, I can access that webinar, the next hour, the next day, next week. So we've seen that go crazy well. We've also, our in-person CLEs, I think they're expensive, right? So one of the things that we've had some success with is teaming up with local bar associations to use their facilities, because then you get a cheaper rent rate. I don't know that we could even put one on in a hotel right now. I just don't think that's even possible without losing a bunch of money. But we've been able to at least break even on the in-person ones at bar association buildings, and then see some benefit in aftermarket sales on those. Another thing we've had really good success on is actually we've actually seen our numbers grow over the last year. I think a lot of it is the social media. I think more people out there are seeing what we do and seeing the benefit of what we do, and that we look like a fun group when we're sitting at the table, debating these things. So that's, I think, but we also have an outreach committee that has made a point of going around to a bunch of things. They have a little traveling show. And they went to all the diversity minority mentoring picnics. They went to the Coziac. They went to the Central Florida. They went to the Diversity and Inclusion Symposium. We actually were the only section to actually have people at a table there. So we got so much kudos out of that. And they have like a little, this was Mary's idea, a puff poll. And so there are 2 jars, and they each have like your selection on them to vote on. And then there's little puff bowls, and you pick up the puff bowl and you put it in, and at the end of the day we declare the winner on the puff bowl. And one of the most pressing issues in appellate practice right now is 1 space or 2 after a period. So we get to do the puff polls on that, and
It's 2.
It's 2. And I don't know where I think Danny left the room, but he wants to throw it down all the time on social media about the 1 space. It's just, it's a travesty. So we do that. So it's a way to get people interested and come to the table and talk to us. So that's been really good for membership recruitment. I think we've struggled with something that you mentioned also, the newsletter, right? So we had a newsletter also. It was originally the print edition, and we get some really good substantive articles for that. We also would do judicial profiles, things like that. And so we did it, used to do it the old-fashioned way. Some people would send in the articles. You'd have to get them edited, typeset, turn around, print it out, mail it out. Yes, you can send a copy by email, and we did that for a while. It's extremely labor intensive. Nobody ever wanted to be the editor of that thing. We were lucky to get 2 out a year, and we finally just decided that maybe we should switch to something else. So we have our social media, we have our e-blasts, but we did still want to have some type of place for articles. So we've switched to the Record Online. And the idea is to run it more like a blog, where articles can get posted as they are, as they come in, rather than having to compile them and typeset them. And it's good, but we've lost the substantive articles. I don't think we're getting a lot of stuff. We get some, but I think not as much. I feel like people don't feel like they get as much benefit if it's just an emailed story or a popped up story. And then the logistics of making sure that when it gets up on that website, somebody tells the social media person, who then links to that, and then that somebody tells the e-blast person so that the e-blast goes out. So we're still working on that. I'm not giving up on it yet, but that I think is something, the transition from our print media to electronic is still something we're working on. So that's all I had.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say ladies before gentlemen, so I'm going to jump ahead, Joe. And so what I want to talk about is just what went well for us in the elder law section this year, and I want to also talk about, if I had a chance to do over, some things that I would have probably done differently. First, what went well was about 4 months prior to becoming chair, I got an email from our then bar administrator saying the bar wants you to give us 5 stated goals. So I really had to think about that, write out the 5 goals, and submit them to the bar. That was a really good exercise because I stuck to those goals. You know, one of my goals was I wanted us to be more active in legislative efforts. Well, you know, speaking to existence, we passed, or we got our first bit of legislation that we actually drafted passed this year in our elder exploitation bill. Another stated goal was increasing the diversity and inclusion of our section. I wanted our section to look like the Florida Bar in general, and part of that was we brought in law students as members. We promoted to them all the law schools. We went out and we let them know that they could join for free. First, we had a $20 membership fee or $10, and they just weren't joining. But for free, we got people joining, and we got the elder law professors in the law schools, get them in. And we just got a lot of younger people wanting to join our section. So I don't know if our section membership actually went up, but it was just something that we're more aware of, and that at least I was more aware of because it was one of my stated goals within our section. So that really helps. So when it comes your turn to do that, regardless of what type of time frame or deadline you're given, really think it through. And make these goals realistic goals and things that you'd like to talk about at the end of the year when you have to submit what we've done, your annual report then, to the bar. Another thing that works well for our section, we're a section of planners. So we have 2 days every year where we go off into Oviedo, Peggy Hoyt's office. Her partner is an elder law attorney and actually chair-elect. And we lock ourselves into a conference room and we hire a coach, and we actually come up with short-term goals and long-term goals. We roll this out to our committees and the rest of our section, and then it's something we're held accountable to, and something we strive to achieve. So that works for us as well. Communication, one of my goals also was just communication with other sections of the bar. And a lot of you anyone who's an immediate past chair right now could tell you I reached out to them. I wrote letters and emails to all the immediate past chairs. And I remember the international law section, when I reached out to them, then they said, join up for, they sold me something in their newsletter. And now I get their newsletter every time it goes up. I'm on their list. I thought that was neat because that was a way for me and my section to stay abreast of what was going on with them. And that communication was great because even when we were doing our legislation, you are required, like Buder was telling us this morning, you have to reach out to other stakeholders who this might impact. So we didn't do what we did in a silo. We reached out to Reptile, and we reached out to the family law section, and any other, I think we worked with bankers, and any other section that might get impacted by this, we worked with them as well. Communication also, for me, meant communication not just with other sections, but with the big bar. I got to know who section leadership were and communicated with them quite frequently. Communicated with people within my section. When the results came out for board certification attorneys, I picked up the phone and I called them and congratulated them. And people were actually taken aback by that sometimes. I was actually on the phone reaching out to them. But to me, that was important. Also, I'm big on recognition, and I believe that when you are chair, if you want to accomplish things, you need your team, you need your people. So you have to make sure that you recognize them, and so our team, make sure you communicate, and they knew what was going on. When I went away to meetings and came back, that information was shared, and when I got the opportunity to go out and address the Board of Governors, I drove all the way down to the Florida Keys, poor me, at Margaritaville, and made sure I delivered my report in person. It was important to me that they knew what we were doing. I want them to be aware of all that we did for the year. See if there's anything else I think that's important. Our newsletter, we're doing a really good job with that. I think I hear some of you sections talking about it. We struggled for a while, but then we start collecting articles. There's no reason why we need an article a month before things are due. So someone will actually, like a marketing person, might actually give us 4 articles for the year. And we have those on hold, and we could pull from those when we need it. So we still do have to push and ask, and with our newsletters don't always come out on time, but we're still doing that. We're still sticking with our paper right now because we like when people hold things in their hands, but that might change. That might be something that changed later on, but that's still happening. See if there's anything else I want to talk, or CLEs. We're doing our in-person CLE. We have a flagship CLE, which is in Orlando every year, and that's a huge, big networking event, and we do that live, and we're trying to also do a bit more of the webinars, so we made some changes this year, and when we rolled out our new exploitation statute, which took effect on July 1st, we had a webinar training for that. So that was every month. We also have a mentoring committee CLE. So we have a mentoring committee, and they recruit an expert, and this expert will then, we have a lunch and learn telephonic, and we have younger attorneys or people who are just coming into the practice could call in, and that's free, and that's a great benefit that we provide to our membership. So if I were given a chance to do this all over again, what would I do differently? Modes of communication. We have our emails that we use. We send letters out. I'm big on surveys to get a feel as to what our members are doing. Social media, I see there's definitely a need for it, and we didn't have anyone to do it. Jason, who was a chair-elect now, chair, he was managing Facebook for a while. I was a Twitter person. That's good. I made great Twitter friends. Kristen and I, are good Twitter friends. So, it's funny because you make these friends and you communicate for a while, and then you meet them in person, and like, oh my gosh, we're friends. But I would have wanted to delegate that out to someone else, someone younger. You notice that when our social media person was here, he didn't name the elder law section as one of the stars in Twitter, right? All right, because I was a person behind it. But if we had gotten someone younger,
I thought you did a fantastic job.
Thank you, and more savvy earlier on in the game. So we have done that, though. Jason, when he came in, he has now, we have a social media committee. And so I'm looking forward to great things from that. Also, stepping a bit outside of my comfort zone. I used to be CLE chair for many, many years, and so I'm big on the in-person CLEs, and that's just how I learned to do it, and I didn't want to change from that. And I really, towards the end of being a chair, really saw the benefits to webinars and see how we could get information out really quickly then. So that's something I probably would have looked at a lot earlier. So, see if there's anything else. Right now, what we had, not necessarily me, but our section, and we've changed that, is you saw when they came in today into the presentation on the budget. It was just overwhelming. And who was dealing with that for us was our treasurer. But then the treasurer changes every year. So they take that knowledge base with them, and someone else is now learning all of that. What we got in place, and that's through our strategic planning section, is a budget committee. So even though we have a new treasurer every year, we also have people on the committee who remain in place, and now we have the knowledge from what happened in previous years that we could draw on. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
How are we doing, Dixie?
Right, we have 35 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
All right.
Time, Joe?
I won't, but yes, I could. Go ahead.
Before it slips my mind. On the budget and the treasurer, I don't think we did it this year, and so I'm going to talk to the current chair and see if we can get back to that. But I do believe, or maybe it was a different section. Like I said, I've been on the executive council of at least 3 sections. To help with that situation, or maybe it was a voluntary bar association. Anyway, the point is to help with that situation with the treasurer changing, not just having a budget committee, which we do have, and your treasurer doesn't have to be the chair of the budget committee, interestingly enough, because maybe that chair decides. Well, ours doesn't, so that's a good thing. But you could have a treasurer in training. So it might not be a Florida bar section, might be some other section, some other voluntary bar. But you have the treasurer, and then you have a treasurer in training. One of the people who are coming up through your leadership ranks who basically shadows the treasurer. And so then the year that they become treasurer, it's not, boom, I'm suddenly the treasurer and I have to learn how to read a statement of operations, but I've already been doing it for at least a year, along with the actually appointed treasurer. And so that's an idea that maybe we can think about for that, because it is hard. I was treasurer for 2 years of the government lawyer section, not by design, but just out of something that happened in leadership. And it really was a very good thing. I mean, the second year was a breeze to me because, it was like I had finally learned all that stuff.
Right,
and when you're learning, and that's when your year is up, when you finally grasped it.
Yes.
Well,
that's why they keep us around. Yes.
probably no section is going to want to go run and change their bylaws to change any of their positions after what we heard at the last Council of Sections meeting, but our treasurer position is a 2-year position, and this past year the chair-elect asked me to have an assistant treasurer who could move in so that he could basically shadow it, and the last several treasurers have become chair. Since the chair is only 1-year position, unfortunately it means not every chair has the benefit of having been a treasurer, because I was one, and it was certainly invaluable. You get to see the guts. So some things that that I think people here will find helpful, at least if you're chair-elect and still have time to change directions at all. So we started this year having, I'll call it an executive committee monthly phone call. It's not a formal executive committee, but I wanted to have a call every month with the program administrator and with the chair-elect and with the treasurer. The treasurer, partly because they often become a chair, and partly because they can keep an eye on the financial stuff, which is difficult to do. It's difficult to look at those financial statements every month, and it's nice to have someone whose job it is to give you a heads up. Obviously, for the program administrator, look, your program administrator will take your phone call, unless it's their Monday morning staff meeting, they'll take your call anytime you call them, but if they're expecting you once a month, then they can kind of have an agenda of what's coming up, and you can have an agenda of what's coming up, and you can even share the agenda in advance. And I wanted the chair-elect because if they heard everything I had to go through during the year, then they'd be all set. So it's kind of the 1-year warning on everything that came up, and I felt that worked really well, and I know that that this year's chair is continuing it. We had a long-range planning retreat, which we've had every 5 to 7 years. I think the practice of law changes, what the section's doing changes, and it gives us the chance to just only focus on that, not on what we're in the middle of doing, but where we think we need to go. We had a professional facilitator. It's actually the same professional facilitator we used the last 2 times. We went through Dixie, through our program administrator to Dixie to find out what other sections, who other sections had used, and I think we got one recommendation of someone who had retired, and one recommendation of don't use this person. But it's a significant expense. We negotiated hours down to something that we couldn't really afford, and we're a larger section than a lot, and we certainly charge. We're going to be the highest dues, and it's still a lot of money. I think you need a professional facilitator. We spent months getting ready. We had we'll call it a mini retreat 3 months in advance, where a lot of the people who we knew were going to be at the retreat got together and had an eye and just kind of figured out what issues we wanted to talk about, not where we wanted to end up, but so that we weren't going to be rambling during our retreat. If your section wants to consider a long-range planning retreat and you just decide, look, we don't have the budget, but we need to do it. I would recommend going to the bar and seeing if they've got someone internally in staff that might help, or find some of the other section chairs who have had a retreat recently and see if they can help you, at least with the planning. But it just helps to have someone there who's not a section person, who has no preconceptions about where you want to end up and doesn't care where you end up, just focuses on the process. That's, I think, the most important part, and the part that we're just not trained to do. That's but people are. That's, I guess, some quick thoughts on planning for meetings. If you have meetings, not all sections have, a lot of you sections, you have your meetings in conjunction with the bar meetings. That makes your life a lot easier. Probably if you're already doing that, you wouldn't dare change it because you see what it costs, and if you're not doing it, like I know Reptile isn't doing it, they would never consider doing it with the bar. Obviously, you give up something. So if you are a chair or a chair-elect, mostly a chair-elect, and you haven't gone through the how do I plan a meeting that is not part of the bar meeting, I think field work is essential. Figure out where you want to have the meeting, and then go there way in advance before you have a contract. You don't have to pick the hotel, you can pick the town, check things out. Your program administrator is allowed to travel. I brought mine to my program administrator before Leslie. We went to Amelia together, and he was in town in Miami for other bar things, so we went to Miami together. And the bar, I mean, your section pays for it if he needs to fly, he or she needs to fly or rent a car, but that's fine. I mean, you need them. They've got the expertise in planning a meeting, and I certainly didn't. If your administrator can't go, then at least have another experienced leader in your section to go along with you, someone who's planned meetings before. Make sure that the facility you're looking at meets your needs. Figure out how many rooms do you need at a time. You may find that it's not going to work. Obviously, you're going to clear your meetings with the football schedule if it's the fall. But that facility that you really want may be having an event at the same time that is 1,000 people coming, and oh yeah, no problem, it's only one room. It's one room, and maybe they'll have a hotel block, but they might be kind of loud, and you might. So you need to find that out again before you sign the contract. The bar is going to do the negotiating on the hotel contract, and that's fine. But you need to let them know also what your requirements are so that it gets into the contract. So again, how many rooms, how many people do you think you're going to have? The contracts have a commitment usually for a certain number of hotel rooms, and you'd better make sure that your expectations are reasonable when you communicate them to your program administrator, or you're going to have a much more expensive meeting than you expected. We are talking, I think we're heading towards having a rolling committee to help chairs with meeting planning, because it is hard. It is a one-year job. Unless you've already planned your kids' bar bat mitzvahs or weddings, then you haven't gone through that before, and I don't think it's really the right time to become an expert in it. So that's what I suggest working on. Also, meetings have extra costs. Everything has an extra cost. If this were a meeting in a hotel, every one of these mics would have cost extra. The Wi-Fi was $10 a person. There was a $450 charge. Actually, I know what the fellow in the back charges when we've had him come to meetings.
$60 for a pot of coffee.
60?
$60.
Cheap hotels are 60. Their place is $100 and something for an urn of coffee. Those are all things, and you need to know that. Look, you're budgeting a year in advance, but you're planning your meeting before that. Everything has a cost, and again, it helps to work. Your program administrator knows a lot of that, but they don't know what it is that you want. So you really have to communicate that and get the numbers from the hotel in advance. If the hotel tells you, like we have a three-day CLE every year. Well, we found out later, or I found out after the fact, $10 per person per day for Wi-Fi. So, times 400 people. You go, wow, 400 people for a CLE, that's great. It is great. 400 times 30 is is that $12,000? Okay, one of the days was only like a half-day thing, but yeah, so $10,000 out the door for Wi-Fi. Did people really need Wi-Fi? Could you have told them, download the materials in advance? Could you have, you know, so things that you need to know. Yeah, don't shake your head. Make sure. What?
Can I jump in on that
Please,
too?
that was all I had.
Your members have no idea how much it costs. And one of the things that I always tried to do was explain to members, you know, just a basic dinner, a chicken dinner with a salad and a little dessert, like maybe just a little petit four. That's $150 at a hotel. I can't charge $75 a ticket for a dinner that is going to cost the organization $75. So I think one of your jobs is basically when you you need to make sure that members understand, because I think most people think, well, I can go out to dinner and have a really nice dinner for $60. Yeah, not at the Bonnet Creek. No, not going to happen. True.
Yeah, that was all I really wanted to cover. I don't know what other people want to throw in.
The other thing I would add too is we also do a monthly meeting of executives, and also over the top of that, I did every other week with our program administrator, Sherry and Joanne. We didn't have them both at the same time. I don't want you all to get jealous. One after another. But every other week, it would be just her and I on the phone, and that was invaluable to me. Like, what am I missing? What do you know that I'm missing? Do we have this set up? Do we have that set up? And it's just a chance to check in and then make sure we both were on track of what we needed. The bar does an amazing job. Dixie's always there for extra backup help, and so they really have been, they are your best friend because they know most of what's going on up at the bar. And when they change systems, they're learning those systems and things like that. So a weekly check-in and understanding. Also, every one of these program administrators, you are not the only person who's calling them. First of all, you probably don't know how many of your members are calling them. Your other leadership is calling them. They're getting emails from other people. So one of the things I tried to do was, tell my leadership, hey, go ahead and copy me on your emails, just so that I know what's going on. I won't chime in, I'll just throw them in a folder. But, that way I knew if my program administrator is getting a bunch, we had one incident where somebody sent the program administrator, 2 days before annual, an email this long with, I need this, this, and this, and this, and this from you. And it's like, this is 2 days before annual, you're not getting that, not in 2 days. So you can run interference there. I just think that is really key. And they have other committees too, so you can imagine. So part of that discussion every 2 weeks was, well, what other things do you have to do? And where can we negotiate so you'll take care of us this within this time frame and then have time for your other things?
Any questions?
Questions?
It's quite great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.